Legendary radio news commentator and gossip columnist Walter Winchell coined the term disc jockey in 1935. He was describing Martin Bloch, one of the first radio announcers to gain widespread fame for playing popular records. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Each week on my podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 13, Chapter 4.
I was a teenage disc jockey. Eventually, I became a middle-aged disc jockey, and for the last 20 years of my radio career, a news talk radio talk show host. I've had lots of jobs in broadcasting. Writer, producer, creative director, but it's disc jockey that these days has me vexed. As in, I did that? There was a job called that? A need for it, apparently? I remember it like it was yesterday, walking into the university campus radio station. I wasn't even 18 yet. I had taken a summer campus tour, wanted to get the lay of the land before the school year started, get to know where everything was, where to make the scene and be hip with the cool kids. Part of the tour was the campus radio station, and not just a closed-circuit station, heard only by students in the various buildings, but a licensed broadcast FM station run by students. As we left, there was a volunteer sheet. What? I could work here? Sign me up. I had been in a radio station once before. I was 14 or 15. It was our local station, popular with all the kids. And it had a contest called Name It and Claim It. They'd play this special effect. Name it and claim it. And then they'd play a song. If you could be the first to call in and correctly name the song, you won it. A 45 RPM disc. Those are worth like almost $1. Al Wilson, the Snake, was the name of it, by the way. YouTube it, it's a ridiculous song. But I won. I probably still have it somewhere. I remember picking it up at the radio station, standing at reception, looking up and down the halls to see if I could spot any of my favorite disc jockeys. Michael Christie, Jerry Lucky, fabulous Freddie Felder. It occurred to me then that I had no idea what they looked like. Much later, I would learn that that was just as well. 9 times out of 10, you meet your favorite disc jockey. It's a disappointment. I was that kid at the end of the day alone in my room listening to the radio. Radio was my first social media, my window to the world. Television too, yes, but in the day, radio, it was more portable. Portable radio. I think I spent at least half my childhood trying to convince my dad to buy me new batteries. Interesting in retrospect, even though I was so into it, that I never actually dreamed that one day I could be on the radio. That and coming in out of the rain are things that never occurred to me. Hey, Larry, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I don't know. Alive, older, rich. No, I mean, what do you want to do? I don't know, go to the candy store. No. I mean, when you grow up, go to the candy store. All right, Larry, you know what? Never mind. Go outside and play. Again, didn't even think that guy talking on the radio, that was his job. That was a job. I did love the disc jockeys. For one, they had all of my favorite records at their disposal, and then some. They always seemed so glad to be there. They said funny things, and said things funny. And when I say window to the world, late at night on the Great Canadian Prairie, if you fine-tuned your dial, through the fuzz and the static, you could hear radio stations from far away, thousands of miles away. I remember angling the radio and hoping that the signal keeps on coming.
From the big Big 89. Larry Lujak plays more hit music. WLS Chicago. 503 WLS.
Sounds pretty antique, doesn't it? Well, it is. It's wonderful, mysterious, magical, amazing, and antique. In high school, once we got our driver's licenses, Dad would let you have the car. We would drive to the outskirts of town, even in the dead of winter, to try and pull in radio stations from Minneapolis, Vancouver, Chicago, elsewhere.
Do you realize that I love you? I'll tell on my 808 WLS, John Landecker, Chicago and the world, and the rock that rolls it.
With all of this, it still didn't dawn on me that disc jockey was something I could pursue. Seriously, I mean, I was enrolled in a university. Not sure why, but I was definitely up for some higher learning. Then that moment, radio station tour, volunteer sheet. All of those listening hours flashed before my ears. I had a moment of clarity. You know that thing you didn't even know was a job? It's a job. And you can do it. I signed up. Note, of course, that the campus FM station was not really a place of disc jockeys. We were more like this new wave of low-key FM announcers. Plus, the station also ran many hours of talk and information programming, classical music. It was a real eclectic mix. Yet, it was a good way for student volunteers to learn the ins and outs of the trade. In my second year, I was voted program director of the radio station, the only paid student position, my first real job. My demise at that first job has already been chronicled in episodes 6 and 7 of this podcast. If you want to go back, I'm not going to repeat the story here. But suddenly there I was out in the real world, which was much different than the insulated hippy-dippy comfort of campus. But I did have radio on the resume. I got a job at the local radio station, the one that was popular with all the kids, the one with Jerry Lucky and Michael Christie, the station where I had won Name It and Claim It, AM radio. I could be a teenage disc jockey. Alas, that wasn't really why I was hired. I remember that my first gig there was to travel with the engineer to the transmitter site and help clear the grounds of weeds and twigs. I was also in charge of washing the station mobile van, filing records, making coffee. That's right, I was officially in show business. I mentioned that the radio station was popular with the kids, but you wouldn't guess that by a lot of the programming schedule. You know how long ago this was? Well, they broadcast 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to midnight. They signed on with O Canada and signed off with God Save the Queen, which was the custom of the day. After O Canada, it was a morning show, a happy, peppy morning show host. Lots of news, sports, weather. He played a few songs here and there, different genres. I remember there was a lot of banter. Our banter is better than their banter. We have better banter. At 9 a.m., the news director hosted a 2-hour talk show, issues of the day, but in the last half hour, he featured beefs and bouquets. If you had a beef or wanted to send an audio bouquet to someone, you'd call in.
When is the city going to fix those potholes? I pay my taxes.
A bouquet today to the City High School junior girls volleyball team just won the regional championships. Oh, it was great stuff. My fave, though, was from 11 a to noon. Trader time. It was like early radio eBay. People called trying to sell or looking for a wide variety of items. Buy, sell, trade. Trader time. For sale, coffee table by grandmother with one leg missing. Biology textbooks for sale. Will also trade for garden shears. For sale, cheap, men's hat. Still works. It was oddly riveting. Trader time. 11 a.m. till noon. At noon there was an hour of news, a full hour. The news at noon. or as the announcer sometimes said, the news at noon. International, national, provincial, local, extended sports and weather. From 1 to 3, let's go west. 2 hours of the best of country music. Is that an oxymoron? Well, it was the best of country. At 3, the drive home until 6. This was a show that had a real disc jockey and a place where you could finally hear the Stones and the Guess Who. At 6 p.m., another full hour of news. At 7 till midnight, the coveted slot as far as I was concerned. Thank the Lord for the nighttime. 5 hours of popular music. The biggest hits from the top 40. Rock and roll, baby. This was why the kids liked the station. Weekends were kind of a mix of all of the above. Except Sunday mornings, they had religious programming from 6 till noon. It was heavily sponsored and very lucrative for the radio station. Jesus saves, and so can you when you shop Sears. One more thing, and this is what gave me my first big break. The station ran all of the local major junior hockey team games, home and away, a tradition that still continues today on AM radio. These games were mostly weeknights and weekend evenings. They had a play-by-play announcer and a color commentator. But what they also needed was someone to sit back in the control room at the radio station, make sure the game was actually on the air, and then also play all the commercials during breaks in the game. Well, you couldn't ask the highly valued disc jockey to do such a menial task. So, hey, where's that kid we just hired? Larry, sit there, do that. Yeah, sure, okay, but what happens when the game ends and it's not midnight sign-off time yet? Well, play some records and be the disc jockey. Yes! And on that first night, when the hockey game was over and they wrapped up the post-game show and they threw back to the radio station, it was still about 10:45 p.m. It was now time for the rockin' Larry Fedoric on the big 1250, kicking it up a notch with a 5-man electrical band, plugged in and ready to zap you up the charts. And the song started, and my microphone was on, and I froze. Couldn't talk. Couldn't even manage a hello. I had been on the air in the FM days, but this was my shot at being a disc jockey. Just like those guys I'd heard from the big city out parked by the highway. I would be joining those ranks, but not at that moment. I froze. So I played a few more songs. I ran station jingles between them. I didn't talk. Finally, sometime after 11, I managed to say the call letters and introduce a song. And then another one, and another. And before I knew it, it was midnight. God Save the Queen, shut down the station, lock all the doors, go home. That night in bed, I did not fine-tune my dial. I just lay there, drifting off, thinking, I am a disc jockey. Slowly, I got a little more confidence. They gave me more shifts. Occasionally, they even let me host Let's Go West in the middle of the day. I played Waylon, Willie, Ferlin, Loretta, but I also used to sneak in Bob Dylan and John Prine records from home. You could get away with that then. Disc jockey. Turns out I had a bit of a knack for it. I got better disc jockey jobs, moved city to city up and down the dial. For a while I was on the #1 station in Canada, and that was cool.
10:06, Larry Fedoric program, 680 CFTR. Today is music history. Hey, Dick, and more coming up this hour right here. Good morning.
I became a decent radio disc jockey. I was okay. If I thought about it right now, I could probably name 100 disc jockeys that were way better than me. But to use the sports analogy, I may not have been the best player in baseball, but I was playing in the majors. Pretty cool. And yeah, it was. So I have no idea why these days I don't find it that cool anymore. Maybe it's just the same crisis that everyone my age goes through, where you sit there and go, what was it all about? What was my contribution? What kind of legacy am I leaving? If you tell me right now that Einstein secretly wished that he had been a disc jockey, I might feel a little better for a little while. But otherwise, I'm sitting here going, what was it all about? Over the years, radio disc jockeys were also known as DJs, jocks, rock jocks, announcers, hosts, radio personalities. My favorite is still from England. Radio and TV people are called presenters. Isn't that classy? So you're a presenter? What are you presenting? Oh, I don't know. Stuff. Disc jockey. Radio. What an odd job. You went in for a 3 to 6 hour shift. You played music for people. The conscientious disc jockey prepared for their shows. Show prep, we called it. You'd look over all the songs that you'd be playing, learn something about the songs and the artists you could share. You know, this song was written for a Hollywood actress. Hey, this band is going to play our arena next month. So forth. You might peruse the newspapers and magazines to stay hip to what was going on, what people were talking about. Hey, I'm sending this next one out to all the cyclists out on the Ride for Kids. Wow, my cousin is doing that. That guy is so relatable. And if you were so gifted, you could also write some quips and jokes to toss into the mix. That was a lot of work. Well, not real work, but work. Of course, some guys also would just, play a Tarzan sound effect and yell gibberish for 3 hours. Some disc jockeys, or even at times radio management, would pay for a show prep service. Those existed. They were for disc jockeys too lazy or stupid to prepare a show or write some quips. You'd get it weekly. It was a couple of sheets, and they did it all for you. Just read this. Wow, what about that Zsa Zsa Gabor? Now here's the Pet Shop Boys. We did all of this over the musical intros of songs, and you had to complete your thought and stop talking before the artist began to sing. That was called hitting vocal. If you talked even a split second over the vocal, you walked it. Not good. Talking as the song was ending and fading out, that was called a back sell. Usually done before you go to commercials. That's part of the strange world of being a radio disc jockey. Identify the radio station yourself, share some information in a personable manner, tell people what the song and artist are, all in the 16 seconds before the Eagles start singing one of these nights. Hit vocal. CFTR, I'm Larry Fedoruk on a beautiful day. Hotter tomorrow. From our toll-free 1-800-REQUEST line, this is for Mary in Rexdale. The boys that started out as Linda Ronstadt's backup band. One of these nights, flying high, the Eagles. 16 seconds. Thank you very much. By the way, if there was a notable music shift in the introduction of a song, like let's say 5 seconds in is where the drums come in, that was called a post. You could hit vocal or you could hit a post. Our song sheets that we read had the artists, the song, the length of the song, and the amount of seconds to posts and vocals. Eventually all the disc jockeys had those times memorized. We had a running clock that would zero out whenever a song started, so you could watch it count up to 16 while you were talking. The good disc jockeys never needed that clock. They could just feel it. What an odd and meaningless skill set. The station programming director liked you to play 12 to 15 songs in an hour. Any less meant you were talking too much. It's funny, they'd say all the radio stations have access to the same music. What sets us apart are our radio personalities, our disc jockeys. Yet still, they would tell you to shut up and play more songs. We had these recorders set up that would only record when your microphone was on. So if you wanted to listen back to your show by way of self-improvement, you didn't have to fast forward through all the songs. It was just you. You could do a 3 or 4 hour shift on the radio, and the length of your air check was like 15 minutes. I just came off shift. I'm exhausted. Well, you were exhausted. Who talks at this elevated level of fake excitement over the course of several hours?
I remember the days, all those years years ago that never fade away.
You know, we talked like ridiculous people. We knew intro times of songs, and we made quips. Maybe I was the guy for some kid alone in his room, and I was bringing him the outside world and all of this wonderful music. Maybe, just today, as I look back, it seems like it was a dumb job. It was a dumb job. But yet, the people who do it well, I still admire the heck out of them. Perhaps I'm also vexed because that whole job is over. I mean, technically it still exists, but to much less relevance. Today, there's 1,000 different ways for people to get their music without the blathering idiots, known as disc jockeys. Actually, blathering idiots is its own category now. It's called podcasts.
As the days move along, you can remember this song.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.